I have worked on a sessions setup for the server, meaning you can log in and you can explore the server and do that with your own username. So I think if I actually reboot the server, oh, I can't. That's interesting. All right, so well, I'll show you how it works then. So let's see right now. Basically, we have a table here called sessions, and right now you can see I'm in that table. So if I just delete R from sessions, just delete from sessions, then there's nothing left for me to do, and so I won't be logged in anymore. So when I go to about, yeah, okay, so because it didn't, the entire page doesn't refresh. This is HTMX, so only parts of the page refresh. All right, so you can now see that if I go to challenges, my data, and it says my data, you need to log in to access this page. So you can log in either up here or over here, and it does know who you are, so it does remember who you are. You're authenticated with Google. I may change that at some point, but basically it now shows this little button up here. It says who you are. I cleaned up the display of this a little bit, so you can now see that it used to show like a random key that identifies the thing. But if I click on that, there's that random key. I get the list of all the tests that I have passed already, and the state, which is last time I checked in with the server, basically io.p was broken because it doesn't show why, but I put like an X in front of every line here just to intentionally break it. And that's basically it. The little WebSocket here is waiting to connect. If I log now into my local machine and I run tanco test again, I would expect to see this update with the actual code, and it didn't. So something is wrong. I don't know. You got to get that little green WebSocket connected. I don't know. Sometimes it doesn't work, and I don't know why yet. But if you refresh it and you get that working, then all is well. Possibly because I wasn't logged in, right? I think that's probably the main issue. I'll get to the code in a minute, but there was some issue with using the cookie on this WebSocket thing. So once you refresh, I bet that's. Anyway, so this it's not beautiful, but it does show like a colored diff of what needs to change, and underlines the thing that in particular needs to change, and so that's the basic idea here. I might remove this white background because it's kind of ugly. In fact, I could do that right now as we dive into the code. Where's PyCharm? Here it is. So that's in style.css. Actually, it's probably not. It's probably in the diff. Probably in result.html. And I'll just move this here, and move this here. And in the diff, I'll just remove this line right here. And if I save that, I guess I gotta put in my password. And should have uploaded, and then if I run tanco test, oh, did not work. I'm still logged in even though I restarted the server. That was not the case earlier this afternoon. Oh, that still worked. What's wrong with that? Maybe I also have it in the style sheet. Oh, maybe I also have it in the result.html. Oh. Maybe I need to refresh the whole page. because it is in the style sheet and not in the HTML. There we go. Okay, that's right. Now it underlines the thing that needs to change. Okay, so that's just a minor change. So let's look at the code review. Let's look at the list of changes in GitHub that I did today. So login system and who am I? I'm just going to open them in order. And we'll go through them briefly one at a time. You don't get to see me fumbling through all these mistakes and whatnot, but all right. So this first one added the login system and who am I? So who am I is what populates. I'm going to close this. We can is what populates this up here. If we hit Control U, we can see that the div at the top is just who am I. And it's a div called who am I, and we say hxget, that's htmx. Who am I, and then we swap this whole div with that, and then load once at the start. So as soon as you hit this page, it's gonna fetch that for you. And then who am I itself is, well, as you can see down here, is in a yeah, probably easier to look at it this way. I added it over here in. It's just a template that either shows you your username or it sends a link to the login page. Yeah, so let's just look through the changes here. So I temporarily added this dictionary that is just floating around in memory. That's why I mentioned it was dying when the server restarted. So that was my initial attempt at a session. My nomenclature was a little bit off in the JWT. You can see down in the second here. Yeah, basically, I was using the word UID to mean UID should be a number representing the user table, a primary key in the user table, whereas auth ID is something that has to do with like Firebase. So I'm using Firebase as an external way to log in and handle all that authentication. And then once you log in, Firebase sends me a token, and that has a authorization ID. So that's the remote ID. My hope is that if other people use the server, either they use Firebase or they have some other way of doing that. And so that's not really supported yet, but right now you've got to use Firebase. But anyway, you got to set that up yourself and talk to your own authentication provider. But once you do that, the login page sends once you're logged in, the login page sends a request to login success. This was already being done basically for the client login. We say tanco login. That logic is basically the same, except instead of generating a JSON web token, we're going to generate a cookie. So up here, this who am I checks to see whether that cookie exists. So if you have a cookie and it's called ses, then that ses contains the string, a random string that represents your session, and your session contains a key, or that it contains that random key, and that key is mapped to a dictionary that contains arbitrary information, but in this case, the user ID and the integer. So UID is now referring to that database record, and you can see that in this sessions table we have the key. Somewhere in here, one of these ones refers to the UID. The other one refers to the server ID, which is always server 1 for now. And then there's also that dictionary is actually saved as JSON. So whatever we put in the session is just serialized as JSON and saved in this one row in the database now. But before that was happening, it was here. So that's that. So who am I gets that, and then takes that UID and figures out what your username is, and then uses that to allow you to render your username and whatnot. And once I did that, I called it data here. Data contains all the data from this query, select everything, username basically, so that we can include that somewhere. Okay. We added login success. Same kind of thing. You get the access token. I guess I still have one thing to do, which is you need to validate this access token. So decode access token. Okay, click on that and go to it. But we'll see that in a minute. That was refactored. That was extracted from the old the command line login tool. And so I just moved into a central place so that both login endpoints could do it. So there's off login right here, which is the command line login, and then login, which is login to the website. They both basically have the same logic. They just it's just slightly different things, because one of them has to send send the server generated token back to the client so it can log in later. All right, let's see. I seem to have deleted stuff here. Yeah, this is all the stuff that I had extracted, and I extracted all that stuff and turned it into decode access token. So it gets the access token from Firebase or whatever, decodes it same as it did before. It pulls out the sub, which is this long random string for that represents me. That's my username internally in the system, and so that's that. And then that's what Google sends back as your email address. So I use that as my username for now. I'm going to eventually have real usernames, but that's not important for launch. So didn't do it. Token data. This is being used by the thing that generates the server-side token that goes to the client. So I had to take all that logic and put it back here. I did extract UID from token data, I believe. Another function somewhere. That went into the database directory, or the database file. Because it actually creates it. Once you log in, you get the token from Google or Firebase or whatever, and it's going to actually create this record here in the users table if you have not logged in previously. Yeah, so the other one, the main difference in the other one is it has this pre-token thing, included in the form that gets sent back to it uses that pre-token to figure out what other requests does it need to send a response to. So you send in a request with a pre-token, and it's just sitting there waiting for you to the client the client sends a request saying, I'm logging in with this pre-token, and then it actually opens up the window, logs in with that pre-token, and then after the login is complete, then that pre-token gets sent back to the server, and the server says, oh, there's this other request waiting, and I'm going to send that back. So that's what I'm going to send this, now that I know who you are, I'm going to send this token, my token to you. There's a pre-token and a real token. UID from token data. That's a bug right there. I think I might have already fixed that, but let's just double check that I have. You can see it's saying db.uid from token data, but then I actually put it down here. So I think, let me just double check that in app.py. I think I did like a lint on here. So UID from token UID from token data is in the database. That's the only place it's used. And it actually is there. So over here. So I did wind up moving that into because you can see it's a bug right here. It shouldn't be here. It should be in the DB directory. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It is in database. I just thought I was looking. Okay, so that's good. I forget I'm looking at multiple files here. This is the commit for multiple files. And then in the driver, we did the same thing so that when you get the when you log in, we can use that same data to or we can use that same function to create the logic on the customer on the local database. It comes from a slightly different place, but the logic is the same. Style sheet changes. I changed this. Used to be called user. Now it's called who am I. Index. Yeah, we added this thing that I mentioned. And let's see what else. The success form changed a little bit. So I wasn't using the form that posted to the server. I wasn't using it before. Now I am. I was only before. I was only using it for the the command line case. And now it's slightly different. Now for the command line case, we still use the pre-token. And yeah, right, it has a label even though it's an invisible form. But I had previously shown it, so they had a label before. Now it's all invisible, and I added a new thing called whence, and whence is just a it captures the referring URL at the time that the form is created, and that way we can figure out who sent you, we can pass that we can pass the referring URL, like the URL you just came from when you click the login button. And that way we can go back to the page you were just looking at. That's the idea here. And yeah, so we send the refer. That's basically it. Just minor refactoring. I did lose something here. Which I guess at this point right here. Which is yeah, because it used to show it used to be when you clicked on login, you would get the it would check who the current user was, and you would be able to sign out. I've lost the ability to sign out, but you actually couldn't sign out from the local session because there was no such thing as a local session. It was just telling you to briefly disconnect your Google account from the app. Hello, who is ever watching? I'm just doing a code review of what I did today. So I did lose that ability, and I probably will put back a logout button, but it's not terribly important right now. You can just delete your cookie, or you can open a private browser or whatever. But really, just delete the cookie, and that's all that. And then the who am I thing, I already showed that. That's just that little chunk of data up here. Where to go? That's my chunk right there. Okay, so that was that change. And if you're watching this live or you're watching it in the future, please let me know if this format is useful or not, because I don't know. It's not live coding; it's code reviews. The WebSocket. So when you start this page, it used to always be gray until you got a value back, and so I just had it send an empty string, and that seemed to turn this green most of the time. So that was a small thing I did. So that was that. I'll close this. This is in the live pipeline here. Let's see, cleanup attempt.state and focus rendering. Oh yeah, so it just usually there's two things that are like your current next action is one of the things. I don't have it handy anymore, but in my state diagram, you've got really should keep that around. Maybe I'll load that. Give me a second. Probably should save that somewhere locally. It was in my. I drew it on my Kindle and then on my Kindle Scribe, and then emailed it to myself, and now it's hard to find. So search for Kindle. Yeah. Okay. So one day ago. Oh, I should save this somewhere. In fact, I will save it somewhere. But the state machine basically is the state machine that indicates what you should be doing next needs to, when you go to your attempt, when you go to your current challenge or whatever, you need to see what you should do. So it's either going to be you're in start mode, so there's nothing to do next. In which court, the thing to do is to fetch the next test with tanco next. You're in build mode, meaning you've got a test that you haven't passed yet, but you expect it to fail because it's a brand new test. Or you're in fix mode because something is broken. So at any point, if something is, a test that you had previously passed is failing, then it fails. And so, yeah, so basically you would expect this to say, so basically, if you're in start mode, if you're in change mode or you're done, there's no broken test. So it should only say one thing. So it should say start, change or done. And then if you're in build mode or fixed mode, it should have a test name associated with it. And so that was previously two things. It says state and then focus, and I just put it side by side here. So depending on what state you're in, it either has one or two words here. I thought I liked that a little bit better. It's still not necessarily intuitive. Like I don't know if you know what your state is when you're but like this is an API, right? This is the front end to an API. And so it can look a little funky for now. There will be a nice user interface on top of this, but this is just like the bare bones data, and it's browsable, and this is the back end basically. All right, so anyway, that's what all this was. And this actually was hard coded on the attempts page in the attempts template. So I had two different places where I was using it, and turned out it was much easier to just I guess in the first place where I was using it, it was just pulling it from a database, and I just made the I changed it to use the wrapping in enum, and then yeah, then in the template, the attempt template, I just told it to include this new state template, and then the state template, or I guess I took the two lines and I merged it into one, and that was it. But not terribly fascinating stuff, but I think it looks nicer here, and it makes more sense to me. I don't know, probably needs more help and explanation, probably like even a link to this, like some nice version of this diagram here. Okay. Because like this is kind of like embedding like a philosophy of programming. Like, don't do new stuff until all your tests are clear, or until you have a failing test. And then once you have a failing, once you have a failing test, that's what you should focus on. And then once all your tests are passing, then you can change whatever you want. And so like this is something I'm trying to teach, right? This is part of the teaching experience, right? The mentoring aspect of this thing. Because it certainly helped me a lot. I learned it from Ken Beck and extreme programming, and Martin Fowler and refactoring and that kind of stuff. And it certainly helped me a lot. Okay, what is this? Oh, interesting. So we can browse this a little better. All right, so that was that. Next one, clean up users attempt list. I just cleaned up the way that displayed a little bit. That was, like I said, it used to show the whole code. There's no need for you to ever see that code. So I just hit it and just put the name and the start time. So the challenge name, the attempt itself can have a name, but I haven't gotten that far yet. So at some point you'll be able to say, like, if you have an attempt of the same thing, like we do LearnTris in Perl and Python and JavaScript, then you can do, you can give them each a distinct name. And in fact, there's going to be a drop down for like a language that you can choose, and then that language can be used to like spin up an environment at some point in the future. But there's no, that drop down doesn't exist right now. Anyway, so just change that. Style login page. Style the login page, right? So, so it's a verb style. So I just added the style sheet, just so otherwise there was a flash of white whenever you hit the login page. Pretty print raw result data. Oh yeah, so when you get the result, there's still so if we run the test, yeah, I added this here. It used to be all on one line of JavaScript, and so this page was like super wide, and it was unreadable, especially because you've got this long thing. Like I couldn't see that I had the word actual in here twice. This probably does not need to be there. So I fix that. And then later I'll move it down to the bottom of the page. That was that. Add require UID decorator and apply where necessary. All right, so require UID was a decorator for a endpoint in the server, so an app.py. And so I will say I took a little bit of inspiration from Quartz sessions, I think. Maybe it's Quart off. Yeah, this thing. So there was a module out here that does kind of what I was looking for, and I didn't really use it. I didn't use it at all because like I have slightly different needs, and I figured this was simple enough that I'm not really reinventing the wheel. Like I was just doing something I knew how to do. But I did learn this. So this I'll give him credit for teaching me this, or I guess I should give credit to Port and Flask for having it in the first place. But I didn't know you could do this. So you can have an error handler for a type, right? So this thing, if you have login required, you put that there, and then it raises an unauthorized exception if you're not logged in. So it figures out how whatever it's doing to figure out if you're logged in or not. It raises the exception, and then you add this app error handler for that, and that way you can trap errors. So I didn't know you could do that. So that now anytime you raise an exception, you can trap different kinds of exceptions with app.error handler. So yeah, I thought that was neat. So I learned that from this piece of documentation right here, and thought about it and decided I would just make my own, and turned out to be pretty small. But I did use that design, right? So I did the same thing. So and the reason is because I have two different. I didn't want to try and teach that library how to do something when I would just explain it myself. So this is my wrapper function. Let's see what I did here. So this is def UID from request. I'd actually had that down at the bottom of this app.py file. I moved it up a little bit, and so this is when you are posting. Yeah, so it's posting a form. I eventually changed this to using JSON, so it's a JSON post. But this is what the client sends whenever it sends something. So basically, we want a UID, and the UID is either going to be is either going to come from the cookies. So we say so if there's we say request get cookies session, and then the session is always just a key, so it's always just a random string. So if that key is not empty, then we're going to use sessions.get. So again, this is still thinking there's a dictionary here. Sessions.get from that S key, and then get a dictionary if there's nothing there, and then from that dictionary, either a dictionary with a UID or a dictionary that's empty, and get UID, and then UID, and then so the cookie overrides the choice of possibly doing the JSON web token in the post, but oh yeah, these are actually like this is duplicate code, isn't it? Did I fix that? At this point, that's duplicate code. Did I fix that? Let's see. Nice to do a code review. So app.py should be right up at the top. I think the difference is that up here I'm using the word form, and up here I'm using the word JSON. That's the only difference in this little chunk of code versus that one. I didn't need that. Yeah, no use is found. This is actually garbage. Because the place where that was being called is now wrapped in require.uid, and so now you can use it that way instead. And I like that. So now you can log in with either the cookie or the JSON. And now that I'm moving things around, let's just call that JSN because it's no, sorry, Shift F6 JSN. That way it's not shadowing the JSON module, which is imported at the top of the file. Okay. So this is a little ugly, but you can see we've got a def. So it's a decorator. So we're going to take in a function, and then we're going to return a new function f that is asynchronous. And then we're going to keep the name the same because of routing issues with it uses names to route things. And then the logic is just if we have the session cookie, try and read it. Otherwise, if we don't have a session cookie, try and read from the JWT, which does not send cookies. So these should be mutually exclusive. And it's also in a JSON post. So there's that. If you do send a JWT and it's not in the database, that's an error. So that's this. And I guess that's probably just going to show an error. I haven't really tested that path yet. But since I revamp things here. But otherwise, if neither of these things worked, then we raise please log in, and so then we add the global app handler for please log in that says, I'll just show this template. I forget what happened with the 401 here. Oh yeah, it just didn't show the it didn't show the page. So what needs to happen is when you're logged out and you click on my data, then it should say please log in here. But when I got a 401 back, it did not. HTMX ignored that, and so it didn't show the content in it, which was kind of silly. So I just had it return a yeah. So HTMX ignored. It didn't show the content. Didn't show content when 401 when status 401. Status 401. So we just use the default of the default 200 HTTP OK. 100. All right, so that was that. Let's see, and same thing here. Yes, that was pretty much it. And then once I did that, then I could go through and I added the require UID to all the places where I needed it, and I removed the the insecure default user that was everywhere. So now the me place actually looks up. So also what it does up here, I should have mentioned, is that we call. We take the arguments that you're passing into the function, whatever other decorators are passing into this endpoint, but we also pass in UID equals UID equals this, the UID that we gathered here. So that way you have to add an extra UID whenever you use it. So now in Platonic we have require UID, and that causes us to have to need a UID parameter. And then we pass in, and that's a number, and the UID goes in here, so we can select the username from users, and so we get, this is just everything we needed to do to show that the me page. This is me. All your attempts, and presumably in the future there will be other things like tokens available, my tokens, and the client tokens, and my username and things like that we can change. Because I'd like to say like Tangent Storm or somebody else rather than just that. Let's see what else. This had been moved up there, so I was deleted that. Attempt challenge, same thing. I just added require UID, and then that required that to have a UID parameter. I don't use it, but I probably do use it somewhere in there. I'm surprised there's not more of a diff here. Oh, I see. It previously had UID from request. Got it, right. So yes, I did move it up there, but I also deleted it I deleted the call from here. And this was the only place where I was using this function. So I had extracted it anticipating that I would use it later. So I did that, and so now that UID from request is now see, so you should say login first, but now that's handled by require.uid. Okay, show attempt, same thing, added the UID, and then basically just added this to the list. Right. So you go to A and then a code. Um, and now I just also add in the thing that code has to belong to you. And so if it's empty, then you'll get nothing, right? It does kind of yeah, it does kind of you'll get an index error here. I should on line 199 or wherever it is now, we should probably track that show attempts. I'll at least put a to do trap index error. If no attempt found. This is unlikely because you have to have a code like bookmarked, but I guess if you just went in there and like went here and then we changed it to banana or something. Yeah, we get a 500 error because of that. I'm sure that's the error. The index error, list error out of range, and it's because of that 0. So it's on line 202. Is that right? Yeah, line 202. Because that's where it starts. So this line right here ends here, and so that's the index error. So trap index error. It doesn't matter. Oh, interesting. That's interesting. So the page itself has the state, but the content when it was when I hit the back button was different. So if I go here and then okay, now that triggers the error, and I hit Alt left to go back. Oh, huh. I'm not sure what I did there, but somehow I got that unstyled page. Doesn't matter. Not terribly important. Okay, so I guess this is nice to do a code review. So that's that. Same thing here. I had previously said require UID, and now I have it. Oh no, this is new. So this was I couldn't use require UID because I would get this runtime error not within a request context. Because require UID uses the request to find out if you have a cookie or if you have a form post. And so I guess technically if you know somebody's attempt code, you could sit there and watch them make attempts and like be notified when they ran the tests. But like, is that a security issue? I guess technically it's leaking information that like you don't know anything about that user. It's a random code. You'd have to guess it. I don't know. I don't know if that's dangerous or not. I'll try and figure it out, but I don't think it's a security issue or anything right now. Yeah. And if you guess a number that's not correct, then so if you wanted to war dial that, you'd have to war dial, a random 32-bit. So it's what, however many letters in the alphabet, 26, right? Letters, and then you'd have to say 32 times 32 shaped 26, and then multiply those. I guess would be 26 to the 32nd power. 32. Yeah. Which is this number, right? So you have a 1 in, or you have a however many number of attempts there are in that number to chance of hitting one correctly. I don't think you're gonna guess one, right? You're gonna guess one. Yeah, All right. But if you did, you would be able to see that person's attempts to test things with a live socket. So there we go. Same thing for show test, and just again when you click on this, that gives you the detail about that test. It is possible in the future that I will make these tests custom to an individual run. That somehow like that test is going to be is going to have a different manifestation based on who's doing it and what they've done in the past. Just like maybe changes. It's like a game, so like maybe changes early on, choices you make early on affect the test. I don't know. Or and just also this prevents you from seeing a test that you don't have access to yet. Yeah. Although I guess it probably does let you see. What's one like shapes.o, right? No. Let me see. Let's look at the select name from tests. Right. Spawn.l. Okay. Spawn.l. Yeah. So this is how so you shouldn't be able to see that. All right. So this is a bug. Go test. You should only be able to see it if it's your current focus or if it's your yeah. So that's, I mean, it's not end of the world if anyone can see that, but it's like you'd have to guess the name of a test, right? Beforehand. Right, so where am I at? I'm going to put just a to do in here. This is not important. So show test. To do, make sure the user has either passed the test or it is their next test. Okay. So I won't worry about that too much. So code next. So this is when you say tanco next. So again, make sure you're only next test. So this is the next part of that. And that already is there. So this actually. Otherwise, you could spam the server and see the ultra secret. Yeah, that was a joke. So I don't need this. And I don't need this. And I don't need this to do's anyway. So that's that. I can get rid of that nonsense. So then when you pass the test, same thing. We have to make sure you're authenticated. And then a UID and then attempt state. This is the state machine. This is the embodiment of the state machine in this diagram here. I did in my last video. I thought it was going to take a few minutes to do that and it took forever. 4 hours to make that. Okay, so I mean, this assert probably should be to do make this assert be assert go up on. Do I need this? Oh, no, really. This really should give an internal server error or something. Validate the attempt belongs to the user. That is taken care of by that attempt state. Has a UID code in there. Just make sure. And a.uid is equal to this code and UID. And then that will give us an error if it doesn't fail. That takes care of the attempt there. Validate the JWT, and just to make sure, that is actually something that needs to happen here. No. Yeah, probably that to do needs to validate that the validate, that's this, and then there's another place where that has to happen, wherever this other one is called. To do verify, yeah. No, actually, it's actually here in the database. But yeah, this decode access token. This needs to handle that. This is where we get a JWT. Okay, so anyway. Actually, JWT dot. Yes, this right here where we need to do that. Okay, so fail, same thing as pass, except now we have to have a little bit more information. I saw there was an error here because I was saying TN, but this key error only happens if you get if TN is the test name is not present in JSON. So, or really, it's more like no test given or something like that. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, this was basically it. Just require UID added everywhere, and everywhere I did that, I simplified things a little bit, or just added a parameter that had to be passed to something else. That whence thing, I noticed that when somewhere in there, this kind of got fixed in line here, where if it was empty, yeah, if you had just gone to the login page and they didn't have you didn't have a refer, you would get an empty string here. And so now I check, if you're an empty, so if it's none or it's an empty string, then we just change it to the /. Otherwise, it just didn't. It just didn't work right. I forget what it did, but I forget exactly what happened. But it just didn't redirect the right way. I think maybe the redirect didn't work. I don't remember exactly what happened. But in any case, this is the correct behavior, so I won't worry about. Okay, so here, named as attempt. Oh, this is in the client. I changed this code up here somewhere. I talked about it being JSON versus a post. I didn't catch that issue, but I just forced it to always, every time I use that, every time I send the JWT, there was one place where I was sending it as a post, and this time I sent it as JSON. And so once I fix that, then it's all good. Database.py. Just added the UID here. Kind of weird that get next test has an int equals none. I know why I did that, but so database get next test. Let's just make sure that everywhere I call it, can I make this bigger? I always pass in a UID, so let's just remove this default value. And you can see this is everywhere I call it for usages, and they always have a UID. So I guess I was thinking I didn't want it to break everything, but right. So the database just contains a bunch of like queries that are happy to that help me do things. Then I actually use that in the query and then pass it. The linter was mad that I didn't have a space there after the assert, or rather before the blank line. for the new line. So you escape the new line and you can put things on different lines. You can break a line into multiple. You can break what would be a single line into multiple lines. Hello, person watching. Please tell me if I'm rambling or something. Welcome. Oh, bye, person watching. Hit attempt test. UID test UID equals none. Same thing, just make sure it had a UID. Same thing here. Just make sure this gets threaded into the all the next test. All right, then the driver, the command line driver, I removed this because it wasn't used, probably because of something I changed here. Pass in the config UID. So the config actually sprouted a UID because of this, and it gets the UID by looking in the database. I made this a static method because Linter complained. Yeah, here's the. Oh yeah, I changed the signature there because you return none, right? And you might not have a rule. A result might not have a rule. But if it does, it either has a validation rule or. Okay. Here's where the config sprouted the UID, and then in the code that in the runner itself, where we parsed the UID, I fixed that little issue. I just added that to the config. So the client looks in the database. For whatever reasons, it's in the client as opposed to, I don't know where a better place to put it, so that's where it is. But it doesn't actually talk to the server, it talks to the local database. Remove that E that wasn't used, and then somewhere in there I put the please login page that gets shown when the error handler happens. Okay, next up. Remove temp form to test WebSockets. Oh, right. I had previously had a little form in here that would send stuff down the line. There was like a little thing you could open up, and I changed the server, so it disconnected with you. There was a thing that said you would open it up, and you would be able to send things over here. And that was just for testing. I don't need it anymore, so I removed it, and then I removed the form itself, and I removed the handler for the backend. Was that? Result.html, move raw data to bottom. Easy. It's just because like this data is like huge, right? So when you run the test, you get I've broken something in my changes. Most arguments got 3. Set attempt state. I broke this just now. I didn't change anything. Oh, I did. UID code. Execute. Oh, I didn't put extra print. I put this in the wrong place. Yes, I did add that, and I put it in the wrong place. Okay, so put this back here. Reboot the server. Yeah. Okay, so glad I fixed that. Yeah, just this is long and complicated, and I didn't want this to be the first thing you saw. I wanted it to still show you the test that you're failing. So state fix this. Blah blah blah. Obviously, this needs to be cleaned up. It's still not pretty, but if you read this, you know what you have to do, and you can go look at it. But if you actually run the test, like I just did, then you get your specific output, and this needs to be like kind of high up on the screen here. And this, the issue here is that right now there's only one kind of test, which is these diff tests. So you have the input lines and the output lines, and then you do a diff, or you have the input lines. You give it the input lines, and then you have the expected output lines, and then you diff with the actual output lines. And so here's the actual output, and you can see it's all X's, and then This is the diff. And then if you look at the well, the test itself knows what's expected, but I'm not showing that because this has all that information. This has everything you need to know. Yeah, so the input lines for P and Q, but the expected output lines are also known to the system. They're just not shown to you. Okay, go back to here. Anyway, the point is that was a big data structure, and I just moved it down to the bottom. Previously, I did Venom on one line, and when I added this pprint thing, it became many lines and stuff. Okay, so this was a so basically after that, like everything was working. So now I have like the entire system is working. It's ready to go. You can try it. But every time I restarted the server, in addition to losing my WebSockets, I lost all my sessions. So I had two things I wanted to do. One was this next one, which is move sessions to a database. And then also, it's just annoying when you installed it, you wouldn't know where to put this thing. It was always in the home directory, whereas it's meant to be global to your system. And so I updated the README to after the change. But basically, the idea is that yeah, it's going to make this in your home directory .tanco.stb. That's the new place. You can override it with this. And the way that works is, and I also updated some stuff that was out of date. So here's the path. And if it's not that, then we default to tanco.stb, which is, you would probably never want to override this unless you wanted to test another version of the database, or I don't know, whatever. I don't know why you would ever want to do that, but if you hard code something, I like to leave an escape hatch just in case. And so then EnsureDB, all it does is it says create a database at SDB path, or it prints it out. If it doesn't exist, it says creating the database. It imports this whole package, and then from that, it can figure out where you are, and it can look in the top level. From the top level, we're saying OS path join. So look at the top level directory, and then there's SQL, and there's init.sql, which is basically saying find the path to this file right here, and then execute this big chunk. So in the future, if I ever need to make changes to this, like once I hit the button and say, okay, we're live, which I haven't done yet, I'm not doing that yet, but in the future, what'll happen is that there's a table called meta, and I insert this thing called schema version, so 1.0. So once I have, I guess I'm creeping up on a 1.0 release here, and so once I have the 1.0 release, then basically this little chunk of code here is going to have to be extended to say not only ensure that the database exists, but also open it up and check that schema version is the same. And if it isn't, then there'll be more things in the SQL directory. They call them migrations. So they'll be like, 1.1 do this, and then it'll have a bunch of stuff to do. Anyway, but all you have to do is just open those files. You read the file and you say execute script. So this database directory already has a begin, and they're already done here. So begin returns the SQLite connection, and then actually sets the foreign key constraints on. So you have to do that on every connection. And so then you get that, you execute the script, whatever was in your file, and then you commit. And then we would do that for each migration in the future. And then down here in the driver, so the command line tool, before we start anything, we immediately make sure that database exists. So as soon as you run tanco.anything, you get a you get a database. And that way, previously you would have had to like run some SQLite command to make it happen. Like I think you had to do this. You had to go to the directory, and then you had to find that thing yourself. It was just a pain. So now it just creates it on its own. That's it. Okay, and then finally, speaking of the database, I moved the sessions that I'd previously made earlier and talked about earlier, and I moved them from just sitting in memory. That's weird. Do I still have the word sessions in? I'm expecting to see a line here that says I removed something. Oh, I did. Okay. So I removed this line. And yeah, I tried to reorganize things a little bit. So now in the like kind of the structure of the app file of the server, if you look at the top, I think if you Control Shift minus to give you a outline, so you got your imports. This is like a quart thing. So this SID, this is server ID, and right now there's only support for one server. So whatever. This is the this is all stuff that was like live in memory, or is live in memory. So this is kind of a bad name, but this is used for the login process from the client. So you have a queue to set for like inter-process communication, basically. And then this is for the WebSockets. So every time a WebSocket logs into watch an attempt, you get a queue here for that as well. And so then previously this had also had the word sessions in here, and so now I've rearranged it. So you got this little like sessions library at the top, which consists of these things: the get session, the new session, these talk to the database. Which is previously that was a dictionary, and so I replaced that dictionary with this, which we'll see in a second. So basically, I don't know why that's an odd way to collapse all those things. I don't want to collapse all those things. But yeah, so get session just selects a row from the database. New session inserts into that row. It's just the string key, SID, the server ID, user ID, which is a number, and then a data, which is just a chunk of JSON. And right now that JSON is just this, literally UID and the number. So that winds up looking like this. And you can see there's some hidden, other fields in here. So, schema sessions. So there's a timestamp, and then I also added a scene timestamp. I'm not actually using it, but I think at some point I'm going to say, maybe even like here, update the scene timestamp. Because every time you log in and you get a new session, it just goes to this table, and so right. I guess I haven't logged in that many times, or I deleted it or whatever. But yeah, you could log in with 10 browsers and you have 10 sessions or whatever, and it's not clear when they should expire. So I figure when you haven't seen them for 10 days or whatever, then I'll just delete it. But that can come much later. How about update the timestamp in the scene column? Not important at all. I can add that later. The SQLite database can be terabytes in size, so it's not a problem at all. New session. So again, that dictionary got replaced with these two functions. So get just fills this in. And I guess it's really more like sessions and authentication, right? So, so now that we have these sessions, and we have a way of getting a user ID, so I moved that down here. And I already talked about this. Talked about this. All right, so let's go back to the diff. Oh yeah, and I was saying I organized it a bit. So I guess I didn't really move anything around, but I just put these little headlines in here. We got the WebSocket stuff, Platonic. Yes, I've been wanting to make use the name Platonic for something for a long time, but Platonic app to me is something that is just like data, and you just interact with it purely as data, but then like it has a default UI, and like HTMX really gives you that. So in this particular case, I talked about this previously, but a lot of video to go through, so I'll just briefly mention it. So basically this. Oh right, this is for HTMX when you have a fragment of a thing and you want to check whether it's being requested as part of an HTMX page, or just if it is, then you just return the body, and otherwise you wrap it in the layout so you get the style sheet and all that stuff. But this thing is the more important thing. So this is a router, decorator I use here. So it's say me and me HTML. So this is the URL I want to have. This is the style. This is the template I want to use. And normally you would say app route with the template, and then in here, like so here where I say app route, you have to return something. Usually, well, if you return data, it renders that as JSON. I think everywhere. I don't know if I have an example of using it where I don't use the Platonic thing now, because like here, who am I? That does not come back as JSON. So generally you return like a rendered template or something like that, or just a string or whatever. And that's what Platonic does. Is it allows you to so it makes two routes for you. So it gives you the route, but then it adds another route that has .json at the end. And if you call the one with .json, it calls this version of the function, which awaits whatever you're wrapping, the thing you're wrapping. Oh no, sorry. At first it does this. Ah, yeah, okay. So this wrapper together they do it. So it's the exact same function. Yeah, you can see it's just FP, the Platonic version, and then the JSON version. The JSON version calls the Platonic version, but now the path is different. And if it ends with JSON, we just return the data. And if it does not return, if it does not contain the .json, then we return the template that we passed in up here. And then in addition, if it is an HTMX fragment, then we wrap it as if it were a HTMX fragment, as provided this is true. So that takes care of this decorator as well. So that's kind of the idea. I know it was complicated, but basically the effect, this is a really ugly piece of code, but the effect of it is, yeah, what it says, allows an endpoint that returns data to serve HTML or JSON depending on the presence of the string.json in the URL. And if it returns the HTML, then you just use this template. And I really like that. That's that. Okay, that was a bit of a moved off a little bit. Okay, so blah blah blah. I moved random string into the different module. I don't know why. Oh, because I thought I was going to use it from another place, and I didn't want to import the app. The app should be like the web server should be the thing that imports everything, and nothing should depend on the web server basically. So I moved that random function into the model.py. Okay, but then I think I wound up moving, like it was unnecessary to do that, but doesn't matter. Same thing. This was just oh, so when I moved it to get session, that always returns, that could possibly return none, and so we have this or here. Otherwise, it was sessions.get, which was previously that dictionary. Now we call that function that talks to the database. And here, login success. Yeah, so this is now. Oh, this is where I was originally setting up the session, and I just replaced it with that call to that function. So I moved the logic into new session, and then I changed it to talk to the database. Random string, like I said, I moved that to another. I moved that to the model package because I use the random string for tokens and session keys now and a bunch of things. But I had intended to move the session key stuff into the database, and then I moved it back to the top there because it was all web related stuff, could be used by other port apps or whatever. nonetheless, it's in .m now, or the M directory, or the model, which I imported M. UID from token data. Yeah, the server ID is always hard coded because there's only one server at the moment, but maybe that's unnecessary. But you know, the database supports multiple servers. You can certainly talk to the database needs a server ID because the client can talk to multiple servers. The server itself probably only has one ID, or yeah, has ID 1 for the server. And then model.py. Yeah, actually don't know why I added JSON here. Probably don't need that, right? Anyway, but this is what generates the random keys. I think, first of all, I don't need this at all. So let's I mean, I don't need this anywhere other than in the app. So I think I'm going to move it back because the app is the only thing that generates those random things. And then I'm going to move it back because the first of all, I bet it says, oh, sorry, it's in model. Where's JSON used here? Oh, from JSON. So I guess I was using it. Okay. But why did I? Oh, import string and import random. Sorry, for whatever reason I thought I was reading that as importing JSON. Okay, so string and random. I'm just gonna move these back into. I'm gonna move all this stuff back into the. Well, hang on. Yeah, everything is in app.py, so I'm just gonna move it back to app.py. It was a weird thing. It's not part of a model. Like it just that was a place to put it. So that's weird. So then this gets part of the random string. You still clean up imports? Maybe that was a Rust thing. I think the idea is the standard is you put all the stuff that's in the standard library, all the stuff you import as independents, and then all the stuff that's in your code. These three little sections. All right, that's that. I suppose I should double check that the then I added the sessions table. And basically I just copied and pasted that into each of my databases. And that's that. And I guess that's it. So that was all the changes I've made. I'm going to commit this change right now. So it's over here. GS, GI tanco, GD cache. Let me just review this, see if there's anything I want to comment on. It's all minor stuff. So minor changes from code review. And then that should show up here. And that's it. So that's everything I did today. And that brings me to the point where this is basically ready to go. I'm going to make it. What I'm probably going to do, like this. You know, this is kind of ugly. This is not like this thing has to be here because it powers the workflow, right? So you say you say tanco log in, and then you say tanco init, and then you have to choose a challenge to do. And what I think I'm going to do before I announce this, I'm going to make a little tutorial video on like how to do this. Like how to set everything up. Well, A, I'm going to document it, and then B, I'm going to like read those docs or like, you know, demonstrate those docs in a video. But I'm going to wipe out this database and or at least replace this with like a hello world thing, because this has like 2 little tests that I didn't actually use for the self-testing. I mean, I kind of used them, but not so much. I'm make like a hello world thing, and the hello world will be a challenge where you basically say hello world, right? Like you say hello world, and like what is your name, and then you respond with like if the server gives you or if the client gives, if the person running the program, the user gives you an answer to what is your name, then you say hello whatever your name is. Otherwise, you say goodbye, or maybe you always say goodbye, whatever. But it'd be like a 2-line test or whatever. And I'm going to set that up just so people can try it and stress test the server and that kind of thing. And that way, I have a demo for like how the thing works. But it would actually like do something with input or whatever. And so you might have a test that said hello Fred, and then another one that said hello George or whatever, hello Wanda, and then I will wipe this out for now, or at least rename it to Tanco, and then I'm probably gonna call this LearnTrist Classic, and just make it open for anybody who wants to use it like right away, and it will be exactly with this ugly code and whatever, and people can just use this UI. This UI is not pretty. This is the backend, right? This is an API, and it just happens to have some HTML, pizzazz on it or whatever. But the intent is that you would actually be able to play through this and use the thing. And I'm probably going to do that. So my next stream is probably going to be me working through LearnTrist in J, or in some language. Probably J, because I know J, and it's also like my other channel is mostly expecting me to write videos about J, and so I will do that, and then try and make a video to introduce this to the world, and then start marketing it to like people, and see if I can get people to show up and take this thing and give me feedback on the experience, and like find out if they'd be interested in doing this while I work on the next challenge. I'm probably going to make a LearnTrist 2, or like a modern LearnTrist, and maybe even expand extend it to use like all the rules of Tetris that that kind of get glossed over here. But yeah, that's it. That's basically it. So I think this application, this Tanco thing, is done. I might at one point do one more video that just talks about like how it works. Do like a summary video of everything I did here that summarizes the results of the 900 hours of video that I did. This was like 2 weeks of work. I think I started it on Christmas Eve, but then I didn't come back until the 5th of January, and it's now the 19th of January, so basically 2 weeks plus 3 plus a day. And I didn't work every single day, and I didn't work full time on this. But maybe a week of full time work to make this thing, but spread out over a little over 2 weeks. So yeah, I'll probably summarize it, and I think I'm done. There's like a couple things like nagging at me, like the like if I were to wipe out the database, or you wiped out your database, and then you tried to log in, your data would still be here, but your server would be, your client would be out of date, and there's no way to recover from that. And so I'm thinking there'd be like a command that ought to be called like tanco recover that would basically just go here and fetch this list and then repopulate your database from the thing. Like I'm not sure I'm exposing this as but if I say .json, I bet I get that list, right? Nope. Okay, well, oh, that's interesting. It happened again. But anyway, this ought to be exposed, and then the client ought to be able to download the list and recover your session. But for alpha testing, I mean, I think we could just say start a new session. Just delete your .tanco file and do tanco init again, and then do and you'll get a new session, and you just pass all those tests. So I think it's fine for that. So yeah, so my next thing is to make a tutorial, make a documentation, make like a how to do this, make an article that describes what to do. 2, make a video that acts out that article, and then 3, put a hello world thing up on here, and maybe 4, rename this to Learn Just Classic or whatever, and that's it. And then I will hopefully get some people working on this, trying it out, using it, and we'll go from there. Of course, then the whole, there's more I want to build on this, but this can be built on top of this API. This is the open source part. This is the part that anybody can use, and they can run their own server if they want. But I'm going to set my server up to have editors in place and talk to the cloud, and you'll be able to spin up an instance. And so when you pick a language, you can say, I want to run this on a Java backend or a A backend or whatever, and you'll be able to spin up whatever language you want. And do it in the cloud, and not have to download Tanco at all. You'll just be able to do everything from your website, and you'll be able to log in with GitHub and all that stuff. But and I might fix that, but I don't think that's part of Tanco. That's part of like one little file that bridges this thing to Firebase. I'm just kind of rambling at this point, so I think I will stop here. If anybody wants to know more about this stuff and want to get in contact with me, my email's been on the account this whole time, but you can also go to tangentcode.com, and if you go to community, you can go here and join our Discord server, and that's where I'm posting notes about everything and encouraging people to sign up and to try it out. So if you want to be part of the alpha testing, then that's the place to go. All right, tangentcode.com. And I think I'm going to wrap it up here. So thank you so much for watching.